Okay. Okay, everyone. Welcome back to the Seeds of Healing. Full house today. We're going to continue our piece in Yisur Mamrekin, Rav Kook on suffering. And just by way of introduction, I've been thinking about this all week. Our piece that we learned last week about how we can't really understand God and the existential pain that we're all going to suffer. Really what this is about is, in many, many ways, is about our humanity. That us as humans, we suffer, and there's no escaping. And it seems to be that the suffering causes us to encounter the existential questions of life, the questions of who am I? What is this world that I'm in? What is the purpose of my life? Why is all this happening to me? And these questions of life, certainly we have from the world of psychology, we have Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, The Will to Meaning. We have May, Bugenthal, Rogers. And in our Jewish tradition, Baruch Hashem, we have tzaddikim. We have Rabbi Nachman and the Lost Princess. We have the Alter Rebbe and the Tanya. We have all tzaddikim that have attempted to answer this question of, we have Iyuv, all tzaddikim who attempted to answer this question of what is the purpose of our lives and how do we encounter suffering? What's the point of suffering? Why do we have suffering? And really these tzaddikim, they're coming to answer, they're answering in a certain way, they're responding. They're responding to the question of what is the purpose of my life and why is all this happening to me? Jung, he was one of the students of Freud, he used to say the greater the sun, the bigger the shadow. That it seems to be embracing struggle, embracing pain, embracing our humanity where we are, that it's great people that suffer so much. And the wrestling with the unknown, the wrestling with the pain, the wrestling with the things that we don't know about in life, the struggle is the thing that brings out our greatness. If not for that, great people struggle tremendous amount. As we're learning, we saw from Rav Kook how much pain that he was in. We learn about the tzaddikim, Rabbi Nachman, and even not even going that far back, but just every one of us on our individual way, the amount that we suffer, the inner turmoil that we experience, it's the struggle, the wrestling with the unknown, the wrestling with the pain, with the questions of who am I and what is my identity and why is it, what is my place in this world, what is my mission, what is my shlichus, what's the point of all this? The questions of life, wrestling with those questions is precisely what makes us great. And Rav Kook is responding to this in many ways as well in his piece. To catch us up to speed, Rav Kook is saying that all pain and all suffering comes from not knowing God, from trying to attempt to know God. And this leads us to a darker place when we think that we understand God. And again, he's wrestling with these existential questions of why is it that we all suffer? But all suffering comes from, his answer to this question is, it comes from not knowing God. That somehow if we knew God, the suffering would dissipate, the pain would dissipate, we'd understand the goodness and the context in which all this happens. Now we're going to pick up in the second paragraph from, Michael, welcome. Please. All right, we're going to pick up in the second paragraph over here. And we started it last week. We read one sentence in, but I'm going to just start from the beginning to give us a good runner over here. Iker ha'amuna hi b'gdula shleimas ein sof. The main amuna that one needs to have is understanding the gdula shleimas ein sof, the greatness of Hashem's ein sof. And again, we spoke about this last week, how this one line you could stick on your entire life. Shekol ma shenichnas b'toch halev harei ze nitzutz batel legamri legabi ma sheroi liot meshur. And anything that you think you understand about God, any level that you think you've attained, is really one spark in the vast, infinity of life, and it's really not even close to what's fitting, what's supposed to be. What's fitting to be and whatever you think you understand is really nothing compared to what you're actually supposed to understand. Okay, now this is really where we're up to. If you're going to say on something that is good or something that is kind, hamishpat hagvura hatiferes, something that is justice with strength, harmony, v'kol mashu chaim u'per chaim, and anything that you found in life or anything that is notable or good in life, o al davar amunah ve'elohus, or on matters of faith, and divinity, hakol hu ma sheneshama kosefet b'mkoriusu l'mala min hakol. All this, right? All this is not even close to what the soul really longs for, right? So anything that you're going to say is good in life, right? I don't know, truth, justice, harmony, financial wealth, integrity, anything that is rooted in divinity, anything that is divine, anything that is justice, is nothing compared to what the soul wants, right? Filling up the soul with all these good things that we say, oh yeah, it's soul food, right? Mazon dinishmasa. But the soul wants everything. So no matter what you're going to feed it, it's not ultimately going to satiate the soul. Gam kol now he says something. He says something even astounding. Again, Rav Kook is going to level this up. When I saw this, I was shocked. I was like, really? Is he saying that? And we're going to see this. Gam kol hashemos v'kinuyim. All the names and all the names of Hashem and all the permutations of the names of Hashem, all the nicknames. Bein ha'ivrim u'bein ha'lozim, whether they're Hebrew names like Hashem's name of Kel or Shakai or Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, or whether they are names of Lo-Ozim in foreign languages, God, right? You want to say the word God, right? Eibishter, Tati in Himmel, right? Einam notnim ki im nitzos katan v'kehei me'or hatzafon. They only give they're only a little bit of maybe a small spark that is dimmed from the great hidden light of God itself. Again, I'm trying to use even for vernacular and vocabulary to describe this. Shanashama shokekes lo va'omrim lo Elohim. That the soul desires so much and it calls out Elohim. Even the fact that we say Elohim is only a nitzus katan of what God really is and what the soul actually wants. He's going to explain this. Right? That's pretty astounding. That even saying the word Elohim, which is one of Hashem's name, is not even anything compared to what God is. Right? Kol hagdaras be'elokus. Kol hagdaras elokus. Okay, let me explain this even just for 1 minute. Like, we get stuck in the form of reality, right? We get stuck in, I'll just say a metaphor for this. Let's say a person's looking at a bird. Let's say I'm with a friend, right? Michael, I'm with you. We're in the forest, and I'm like, look at that bird, and I'm pointing towards something, right? So you say, I don't see the bird. Where's the bird? I don't get it. And I say, look, it's over there. Look, keep looking. It's over there. I don't see it. I say, look, it's in that direction. And you're like, oh, wow, look at that bird. That's incredible, right? So even the names of Hashem, they're pointing to a deeper reality. And what happens is we get stuck in the form. We get stuck in what we think God is. As opposed to looking for what's behind the words, we get stuck in the form. And the form is only meant to point you towards the formless nature of what God really is, or an attempt to understand what God really is. But we get stuck looking at the hand. The name is pointing towards a deeper reality, a deeper truth, a deeper existence. And you're just staring at my finger saying, I don't see the bird. Where is it? Right? So what he's saying is, even saying the word Elohim, if you're not looking to the deeper reality by it, it's nothing for what the soul wants. And he's going to now say that we get stuck in the form of God, of names, and that is ultimately avoda zara. He's going to say, Kol ha'agdaras belokus miveli de kefira. Any limiting of God or thinking that you understand God brings you to heresy. Hagdara hi elilit ruchanit. This is spiritual heresy. This is making God into an avoda zara. Afilu hagdaras haseichel. Even limiting God in your mind, the haratzon and desire. Va'afila elohus atzma. Even being magdir, putting finitude on the infinite. V'shem Elohim hagdarahi, and the name of God Elohim is a limitation that we're putting on God, because we're saying God is the Baal Kochos Kulam. God is the source of all sources. So even by saying God's name Elohim, I'm putting finitude on something that's infinite. I'm putting limitations on something that is beyond. Umilbadei hayedia elyona. Shekol eila einam ki im hazrochos hanitzotzos mimala shel and with, I'll just translate these words for everyone listen. And without the understanding, ha'elyona, exalted, shekol eila, that all these, einam ki'im hazrachot hanitzotzos, these are only fluctuations of sparks, from what is beyond this limitation, this finitude, that itself brings towards kefira. Right? So if you're talking about Hashem without the presupposed understanding that I don't understand anything about God, even when I say the word God, even when I say the word Elohim, bless you, right? Even when I say the word Elohim, if I'm not working from the pre-understanding that I don't know anything about God, I just turned God into avoda zara. I just took the Shem Elohim, I detached it from its source, and I said, I think that I understand this thing. You just made God physical. That's pretty remarkable, right? Like, people come and say all sorts of things, right? October 7th happened because of this. This happens because of that, right? And this goes back to what, right? We don't know. We have no clue why anything happens. No idea why anything happens. Right? And isn't that one of the basic tenets of our religion? Lo machshavosai machshavosechem. Hashem's thoughts are not our thoughts. Right? And even when our own struggles from human to human, this is what we started with about embracing our humanity, embracing the struggle. Right? We don't know why, but we know that we struggle. We know that we experience pain. And when we could live in that space of struggle and embrace the struggle, embrace the pain, as opposed to trying to figure out, why exactly all this happened, what can we learn from it? It's not why, it's what. What can we learn from this? What can I do to better myself? There's no answer to the why question. As Rav Kook is saying, you think you understand God, you're going to say Elohim, I'm going to explain to you what every letter of the Shem Elohim means and how it's Baal Kochos Kulam, but if I don't really understand that I can't understand God, I just took it and made it avoda zara. It's amazing. It's amazing. Right? When you detach something from its source, that is alilut. That is avoda zara. That's kefira. That's heresy. Right? I once had a client of mine. He once told me that when he was in high school, he was so angry at Hashem. He used to write Hashem's name down on a piece of paper and he used to tear it up into bits purposely. And that was his way of getting back at God. He used to write it down, quickly rip it up, and he'd write it down again, and he'd rip it up, and he'd throw the pieces of paper all over the place because he's so angry at God that he was taking Hashem's name and getting rid of it, right? And first of all, he's an amazing individual, an awesome person, holy soul. But he was in so much pain, he was taught that God's name is on the paper, right? So if I write it down and I yell at it, I'm getting back at God. And of course, he was a high school kid. He's evolved beyond that, right? But thinking that you understand God brings you to crazy places to do things. And this is what he says. And for people that have separated or from this understanding that we really can't understand, that has brought them this fundamental understanding that we can't understand, that brings them in truth to full-on kefira, full-on heresy. Im hakara halev kruya mimkora zeh, harehu mistaldeles ve'ein la shum erech. If a person recognition, right, of the heart is kruya mimikor, is ripped apart, is detached from this understanding. Harehi mistaldelet, it becomes weak. Ve'ein l'shum erech, and we begin to have, and it has no value. Ve'ein takana shtiyeh me'ira b'tzura chaya, and there's no way to fix this grave mistake. Ki'im al pi ha'kisher ba'aras emuna. The only way to fix this is to connect yourself to emuna. Now again, we're playing the duality over here. We can't understand everything, but we have to have faith and understanding that we can't understand everything. Right? Shehi ha'arat ha'klalit lemala mikol ha'arachim, that this emuna, this deep emuna, like we started with last week, right? This is above all value. It's above all systems. Ubezehi mivaseset et kulam. And this deep emuna is the base and lifts up everything. Ha'inyanim shechutz mizu shegdulas ha'ein sof. Anything that's outside this idea of the greatness of Ein Sof, shehem hasbaras lahagia. Right? Sorry, let me read that sentence again. Ha'inyanim shechutz mizu. Anything that is not included in this, right? That it's like separate, like anything except. That's what he's saying. Anything except for the gedulas Ein Sof, shehem hasbaras lahagia al yadum limkor hamuna, which are understandings and perceptions in order to bring us to faith. Hinem begeder evarim de malka. These amuna, deep amuna, right, are like the limbs of the queen. We'll explain this in a moment. V'yesh mehem begeder levushin de malka. And there's also things that are like the clothing of the malka. Uman de bazer levushin de malka, gam hu meirin yad u'mischai benafsho. And a person who curses, or a person who embarrasses or denigrates in the queen's clothing, right? They're also guilty. Umikol makom srichim levar be'agdara es havdelin shebein ikar amuno bein hasparosa. And nevertheless, we need to differentiate between the queen itself, between the ikar amuna and the svarim and the pathways that lead you to amuna. V'gam bein hasparos atzman, and also the consideration of pathways themselves, es chalufei hamadrega shebehen, and the different levels in which there is. So what he's saying like this, that the levushin de malka, the queen's clothing, the king's clothing, right? So there's the king, right? Let's just talk about myself, right? There's me. You could grab my body, my physical self, right? But then there is my clothing. You're grabbing my clothing, which if you grab my clothing, you're also grabbing me, but it's also not me, right? So it's like if you toe-face part of the person, you're toe-face the whole thing. So when you grab my clothing, you're grabbing me, but it's also not me. It's a levush. It's something separate from me, right? So we need to distinguish what he's saying. But if you embarrass my clothing, you're also embarrassing me because it's part of it. So there's the duality of that when you grab my clothing, you're grabbing me, but you're also grabbing not me because this is me, right? But even if you grab my physical body, there's something deeper, which is me, my soul, right? So what we're saying is that we need to, so it's the same thing with Hashem. We need to differentiate between Hashem's essence, pathways to understand Hashem, and pathways to those pathways to understand Hashem, right? So if you grab a certain pathway, an understanding of God, you need to know that while you're grabbing God, because you're grabbing the clothing, so you're grabbing something that's close to God, you're not actually grabbing God, right? You're perceiving a pathway in order to get you to God, right? Think of it as like makifin, right? There's the panimi and there's the makifin, right? There's something, the essential thing itself, but then there's the ha'ara elyona, there's the outside makifin that leads you to that little nugget in the middle, right? So when we're dealing with Emunah, we're dealing with the clothing, right? We need to say, this is the clothing, this is the shirt, this is the sweater, and that's the etzem thing itself. But if you think the clothing is the etzem thing itself, you're making a mistake. So the clothing of Hashem is his shemus, is the Yud Kei Vav Kei, is Elokim, is Kel Shakai, his Midas Harachamim. This is the clothing of Hashem. But it's not Hashem's etzem. It's not Hashem's atzmusa. And when you grab the clothing of Hashem and you make the mistake to think that that's his etzem, now you're back to Alilut. You're making Hashem Gashmi. You're back to that kid who's writing down Hashem's name on a piece of paper. He's tearing it up and he's throwing it in the garbage, right? It's remarkable. It's remarkable. And the truth is, all of Kabbalah really, really deals with this topic over here about one of the big differentiations that come up throughout Kisvei Ari, throughout the Leshem, throughout all the Svarim HaKadoshim, is the differentiating between Hashem's Gilui and Hashem's Etzem. Hashem's essential self, his Etzem, his Atzmius, which is something beyond, and his Giluyim, the way he chooses to reveal himself in this world. So the way he chooses to reveal himself in this world is through his different shemas, but it's not Hashem's Etzem. But if you stop there and you think that's God, so now you're making a grave mistake. Michael?
Is the concept of Ein Sof also like a beged? It's only a description, or it's trying to get closer to the essence?
Right. So the question, just to repeat over here, and we spoke about this last week, is the concept of Ein Sof a description of Hashem, or is that like towards his essence, or is that just the way he's choosing to be Megala himself? So according to the Leshem makes this chiluk over here, and I believe Mustaber that the other tzaddikim would hold to this as well, that Ein Sof is only a Gilui Ein Sof. It's only one way Hashem is revealing himself in a way that we could relate to him, called Ein Sof. But it's not that Hashem is unlimited. It's Hashem is choosing to reveal himself in a way that's called unlimited. That makes sense, right? So everything you're scaling it back, right? You're scaling it back. Okay, further. Hashimamon. So this is. Have you ever heard anything like this? Have you ever heard? Maybe you've thought this to yourself, but have you ever heard anything like this? No, I've never heard anything like this, right? So, when you think about it, it's basically Judaism 101, right? Right, that's really what we're talking about. On the other hand, I never saw this written in the way that he's writing it, right? So it's like, oh yeah, like, wow. It's remarkable. Okay. Hashimamon, Shalom Achshava Mimiut Halimud, the boredness of mind, the isolation of mind, Mimiut Halimud V'Yadia Mivideis Adam Lichshov Harbe B'Mahus Elokus, right? The boredness of mind, the isolation of thought, and not learning so much, V'Hayadia, and the not knowing so much, Mevia Es Adam Lichshov. It brings a person to think a lot about God, right? I was in a session last night, and a certain individual I'm working with told me he traveled out to Texas, and he went on a road trip by himself because he wanted to get away from people, and he went all the way out west, as he says, and he saw some beautiful sights, but the isolation at a certain point began to eat him up. And then you're in isolation, you start encountering yourself and the existential questions of life in a real way. Who am I? What's my purpose? What am I doing here? Why am me? Why am I me? Right? So the shimamon, it's the isolation that and the boredness, so to speak, that makes you go the other way to start thinking about God. Right? You read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning and a Struggle. Right? It's the pain and suffering that really causes you, like we started with, to ask these questions of life. V'kol ma she'eh yoser meshuka b'boros shel machshavas azus v'sichlas ayuma hazos. And anyone who is meshuka b'boros, is entrenched in emptiness, shel machshavas azus v'sichlas ayuma hazos. Right? That they're entrenched in not thinking about things, or just distracted by life. A person comes to think, yes, I've made it. I've come to understand God. Sheshama tamid shekol gdolei hanefesh shebaolim orgim aleha. A person, they become to empty-headedness, they become to isolation, they become to shimamon, and then they start to think, oh, I've reached the levels of tzaddikim, and now I really understand God. How many times have I heard, I love smoking weed because when I smoke, then I get close to God every single time, right? I smoke weed, and that's when I have my closest thoughts about God, bro. I'm just thinking about it, and I have the holiest, best thoughts about it, and that's when I feel the closest, man. I'm like Rabbeinu Zal, just reaching the highest levels of Madrega, right? It's like Rav Kook is saying, like, a person reaches boredom, and the boredom wants you to stimulate yourself, and then a person starts escaping from that pain, and all of a sudden they're like, I understand God, man. I never understood God like this in such a way, right? So he's saying that a person, all of a sudden, they fall into the world of illusion, and the world of denial, and the world of delusion, that all of a sudden they think they reached the biggest madregas. I only mean that with love to the chevra. I only mean that with love. I love you all. I don't mean that in a condescending way at all, But I'm just, while we're on the topic, it's a, okay. The batzer haregel kezeh b'meshach kamadoros. Now Rav Kook is gonna say it's not our fault. If we think that if a person does that, it's not your fault at all. Rav Kook is going to put this on what we all like to call intergenerational trauma. Rav Kook is going to say that there's an intergenerational trauma that's passed down from generation to generation, which makes us relate to God in this type of way, thinking that we have some sort of tfisa of understanding of what God is. Bibatza haregel kazeh, and going in this path, b'meshach kamadoros, for a bunch of generations, misargim mitoch kach hevle shavarabim. It gets organized and embedded into the conscious of the masses. Shetotzasam rishiyut rabot v'norat. This false idea of thinking that we could understand God comes out of distortion and calamities. A lot of calamities have happened. Until even an individual man, he just wants to destroy his physicality, the haruchani, right, and his spiritualness, merov tzara ve'afela. So because we can't understand God, and then we think that we could understand God on top of that, this handed down for generations and generations and generations, from before the Holocaust, coming through the Holocaust, through our grandparents, through our parents, and all the way down straight to us from the pike. And Rav Kook is already writing this in his days, before the Holocaust happened, that we come to this thing that we think we could understand God. And that leads us to, again, like we're saying, spiritual and physical pain. Of spiritual and emotional pain. As hamatzor hayoser gadol beruach ha'adam, and the obstacle, the block, the restraint that is the biggest hurdle within the spirit of man, biboa leklal das, that impedes us from coming to actual wisdom and alignment. Mevia mashem achshava elokis hi kvua b'tzura miyuchedes ve'yedua eitzu b'nei adam, is the static thinking that occurs within man, mipnei hahergel v'hadimyon hayuludati, because of habituation and imagination of childness, right? The childish thinking that we pick up, that we're habituated to, that God is some punishing person in the sky, or that God is some static thing, right? That childless image of God is, he says, the biggest ma'atzur, right? It's the biggest obstacle. It's the biggest restraint. Having childish and foolish understandings. Again, nourish, that Yiddish, that English word, I don't know, right? Immature understandings of Hashem, right? And this is a spark from understanding. This is a spark of a mehabagam shel asiyas pesel utmuna, making God into a graven image, right? That one of the big ones is you can't make God into a graven image. This is making God into a graven image. A spark of that. Smells of it. And this we always need to be careful with a lot. That we need to learn amuna, and we have to have awareness that is the most clear, the most accurate. So we fall into disillusionment, we fall into intergenerational trauma. As he's saying, ideas get passed on to us for generations. So again, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's not to blame. It's not to shame anyone. right? We fall into this idea that we could understand how things are going, and then based on that, we kind of run our lives. So we think, oh, Hashem wants this of me, Hashem wants that of me, and really we're not sure. Really, we live in doubt, we live in suffix. And by learning this, we're able to embrace that doubt. We're able to embrace our humanity and see that the struggle is real, right? There's so much, I feel like, validation in this. Because really, when we let go of what we're thinking and what we think we know God is, right? We really wind up journeying into the unknown. We wind up journeying into a vast unknown. And there's so much we want to control our experience. We want to plug it up and say, I know why this happens, I know why that happens. So we're constantly trying to plug up our life experience and think that we know. And what Rav Kook is saying is we have to let go of that understanding, right? We have to, I don't know why, I don't know the answers. And the understanding that we have to adapt is constantly understanding and knowing that we don't know. Constantly living in the flow of life, in the flow of not knowing, right? Right? They say those who know don't know. Those who think they know, right? There's some expression like that, you know? And I don't know. Those who know don't say, right? So we need to know that we don't know. It's like Rabbi Nachman says, "Hatachlis hayediah asher lo neda." The main thing of knowing is knowing that we don't know, right? So if someone says, "What'd you learn today?" You say, "I don't know. I got no clue." Right? What'd you learn? I don't know. Right? What'd you say? Right? Let's learn a little further, right? I want to do this piece over here. I want to do the Tachlis HaYediyah piece. If we could do that. I didn't photocopy it for everyone, but I think this piece, I brought this just in case I felt like learning it with everyone. And because it's mamish what Rav Kook is saying, you know, and the overlap between Rabbeinu Zal and Rav Kook is incredible. So this is Sichas Aran over here. Sichas Aran. I got the old copy, the Nanach version, and letter Gimel. Okay. Hiflig ma'od b'gdulas habaris baruch shemo. Rabbi Nachman was astounded in the greatness of Hashem. V'ef shar levar zos b'ksav, and it's impossible to write this in writings. V'amar, and he said, ki l'gdulas habaris baruch ein shiur, that the greatness of God has no measures. Ki nasim dvarim norayim ba'olam niflayim v'norayim me'od, because it happens. Hashem does wondrous things in the world that are wondrous and awesome, ma'od ve'ein yodim klal, and we have no idea at all. Hainu, what does this mean? She'adayin ein yodim shum yediyah klal lo, that we still have no understanding of God at all. V'gam hashemuva, and this that is brought, ki tachlis hayediyah asher lo neda, the main knowledge is to know that we don't know. Hainu gam etzel kol yediyah v'yediyah. What this means is even according to every perception and every feeling and every awareness that one might have, hainu she'afilu she'magin letachlis shel hayediyah, even when you come to the recognition that you don't know, you've come to the main purpose of knowing, is knowing that you don't know. The hainu lo neda is to know that you don't know. Afal pikein adayin zeh hatachlis. Even so, that is not the purpose of it. The purpose is not knowing that you don't know. Even when you reach the level of understanding that you don't know anything, that's still not the tachlis of knowing that you don't know. Because you've only reached the knowing that you don't know in that level of knowing that you don't know. But there are millions and infinitesimal levels beyond the recognition of the knowledge that you don't know, that you're completely unaware of, that you have no clue at all. Right? It's like amazing what Rav Kook is saying, right? That we don't know. And even when we think that we know, when we reach the fact that we don't know, we still don't know that there are millions of levels beyond that. But knowing that you don't know, which is beyond that, there are many levels. So it comes out, Shila'olim ein yodim klal, comes out that forever we don't know. V'afal pikein ein zeh tachlis, and nevertheless, that's not the point of it all. Adayin lo hitchil klal. We haven't even begun. Leida b'yediyas shelamala mizos. To understand knowledges that are awareness beyond this. Hayediyas she'agia ba'al tachlis shelo neda. Right? V'gam hiflig ma'od. V'gam hiflik ma'od b'gdolos ma'alas hatshuva. And this brings us to tshuva. V'afilu she'kishenofel ma'od chas v'shalom v'kol echad nafel m'kol moshe nafel rachman al-Itzlan. Even when a person falls, and every person fell to the space that they've fallen in, afal pikein aser li'aish atzmo. Never give up. You can hear that a million times. Don't be discouraged. Never give up. Ki tshuva gvo l'mala min haTorah. Because tshuva is very, very high. In a certain way, it's beyond the Torah. Al kain ein shum yish ba'olam. Therefore, don't give up. There's no yish in the world. Ki im yizkeyu nasim ha'avonos. Right, I'm just skipping a little bit. Rak ha'klal shemekol ha'nafilis v'yaridish ba'olam rachmana litzlan yicholim lachso yispar v'nakel ki l'gedulas ein cheker. Right, and with all the nefilas and all the pain and all the suffering and all the embattlements and all the pain and all the broken relationships and the trauma and the broken attachments and the inner anxiety and the worry and the depression and the fill in the blank with all the pause, insert here your suffering, right? With all that, we still don't know. And life is calling upon us the question to look deeper, to not ask why, but to ask what, right? What is the purpose of my pain? What is the meaning? The meaning of understanding that I don't know, right? How can we navigate ourselves through the ocean of life? And even when we get stuck in one of the shemas of Hashem, of thinking that we know, right? We have to go beyond that. We have to go beyond that. We have to see mamish to the depths. And it's just, this is just incredible. It's just. Have you ever seen anything like this? Right? No, it's remarkable, right? And he's going to go on to talk about this further. How what he began to introduce, that this comes from generations, right? That the trauma of being detached from Hashem causes so much pain, right? The separation, the attachment trauma that we experience of, again, not knowing, of not being able to figure out, and the soul descending from its source, and the attachment, the disattachment, the insecure attachment that we feel that's passed down from generations. It causes us pain. And Rav Kook is going to go on to say as well, he's going to go on to say even more amazing things, right? It's just treasures. He's going to go on to say that the early Zionists, I know I'm leaving on a cliffhanger, it's important you have to leave on a cliffhanger, right? He's going to go on to say that the early Zionists who came to deny God, who came to kefira, they only did that subconsciously, of course, in response to the old yishuv, the frum chevra, who thought they understood God. That if you think you understand God, the Zionists who came to blow and deny God, because they said the God you believe in is not God. That's avoda zara. Right? So what he's going to, again, we're foreshadowing a little bit, right? But what he's going to say is that they had to deny God in order to bring the frum people to a new understanding of what God is. And that by denying God, as he's saying, the isolation brings to a new understanding, brings you to think about life. And when they denied God, they were ultimately criticizing and commenting on the old yishuv, the frum chevra, the people with the long beards and the payas, to say, you think that's God? That's avoda zara. That's hagshama. And if that's what you think God is, I don't believe in it at all. So they had to deny God in order to reintroduce a deeper idea of God, of understanding that we don't know. So the whole thing had to rot in order for something new to be reborn. Amazing. It's just amazing. It's amazing. Okay, that everyone, we're done for today. Next week there's no shiur. We're off next week. I'm not going to be here. So okay, everyone.
Yeah.
Dai, 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 dai.